Hello, everyone. So, welcome to this wonderful ENFJ discussion. If you are new to my channel, my name is Meghan LeVota, and I'm an ENFJ, and I'm here with lots of other ENFJs. So, and we're going to be answering a few questions about ourselves so that you listening can kind of, I guess, notice your own patterns about us. What do you see? You know, there's going to be some similarities. There might be some differences in how we answer these questions. But let's just jump right into, if everyone can kind of go around and introduce themselves. You could say a little bit about how you got into type, and share your Enneagram if you know it.
All right, so my name is Denzel Mensa, and I'm an ENFJ 9 Wing 1 social sexual. I got into type in 2014, I believe. And long story short, at first, it was my INFJ friend and my wife now, she's ISFP. But at the time, we were just friends, and they were just trying to figure out, like, they were playing with the 16 personalities tests and everything. They're like, I'm ISFP. What are you? And they were like trying to figure that out with me. And so then when they had me take it, I typed out wrong the first 2 times, but I didn't know that because I didn't really know much about this. And I saw it as like, which Disney princess are you kind of test. And then afterwards, so at first I got ESTJ, and then I was like, this is definitely wrong. They're like, yeah, change that. And then I got an ESFJ, I believe, and I was like, okay, 80% accurate, I suppose. Like, cool, well, that's it. And I left it alone, but then Jamila, that's my ISFP wife, her older brother, he's ISTP. He studies this in depth because he wanted to do like movie, like screenwriting and everything. He was talking to Jamila and he was like, Denzel's not an ESFJ, he's an ENFJ. So she starts reading about it. And then she got back to me. She's like, oh my gosh, you have to read about this. This is crazy and all of that. And I was honestly annoyed at the time because I wasn't really into this. And I was like, like, this is just, again, like, which Hogwarts house are you in and stuff like that. Like, I don't really get too much into all of that type of stuff. But I started reading about like ENFJ and everything. And it was telling me things that I had even been insecure about for years, especially as a male. And I was like, oh, wow. Like this is, and it was explaining so many things about me. So I became obsessed pretty much. It's like, I need to learn more. And how did your brother know, but the test didn't know? And then I started learning how to profile, got into cognitive function theory, and here I am.
Awesome. Cool. So, Leeann?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. So in like 2010, 2011, I think I had to be frank, I was dating or talking to an ENFJ guy, ironically, at the time, and he was into it, so he gave me the test and I took it and I was like, whatever. And then I don't remember, but somehow I ended up on Personality Cafe, and then I pretty much was like a regular, like, there for like 6 years, to be honest. And then around that time, I think, was when Personality Hacker, or a little bit before Personality Hacker came out, and they had like really gone into depth and had a lot of in-depth content on cognitive functions, which I had known about, but they really kind of like did the deep dives and made it really palatable, more broadly, and I really latched on to that and really just kept consuming their content, and kind of started moving away from forums because there were other avenues for accessing these kinds of communities, and so that was Facebook for me. And I was in their Facebook group and a lot of other Facebook groups, as many people involved in type are. And then eventually I ended up getting MBTI certified, and eventually ended up on Twitter and, interacting with just a lot of cool people.
Yeah, and you're a 2-wing-1, right?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I am a 2-wing-1, and I mean that I've been pretty confident about that throughout my journey.
Awesome.
And me, I think.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm Drew Miller. I'm a 3-wing-2. I first took an interest like back in like high school. Had like a psych class, and we actually like took an inner class, which is kind of cool. And like I kind of stuck with it throughout college just as something interesting, and then I started dating an INFP who was a psych major, and that's when she really started like teaching me about cognitive functions and everything, and I was like, this is really cool, and I joined this like like the Twitter community, and at that point, finally learned no longer an INFJ, I'm an ENFJ, and that's where we are today. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, hey guys, I'm Brenna, Brenna Paxton, and I am obviously an ENFJ and a 3-wing-4, I believe. I have not been into personality typology for very long, but I've always been very interested. It's like my biggest hobby is self-reflection, self-awareness, personal development, and always has been. And so I have been reading tarot since 2004 and doing a lot of things that really kind of come around the concepts of personality typology and draw from a lot of similar theories and philosophies. And then within the past few years, I got to know Meghan LeVota. We met through Facebook and discovered we both lived in Kansas City, Missouri, which is where we live. And Meghan became one of my best friends and my business partner. And through talking to Meghan and just philosophizing, like two ENFJs always will, we started talking a lot more. And I had taken the test in the past, various different tests that would always type me as an ENFP. And within moments of hanging out with Meghan in person for the first time, she immediately said, like, no freaking way, you are not an ENFP, you are an ENFJ. And it's been really, really fascinating to learn more about the functions. Especially, it's an honor to be able to learn from Meghan in real life about them, because it's like I get to learn about it as I say something out loud. I get to learn about what the function is that I'm using or ignoring or whatever. So that's been really, really fun. And especially lately, we've been connecting all of the dots of a lot of the previous things that I've studied and how it relates to like Jungian psychology and different theories and that.
Yeah, because I'll just say real quick that Jung actually was inspired by astrology and tarot when coming up with like the main 4 functions, when they kind of correlate with like the 4 elements. And so Brenna has been studying like the elements and like what they mean so much that a lot of it does overlap, even if it's not exact. So
yeah, so it's more like I've been having to learn the vocabulary for this system and, the shorthand and all of that. That almost feels like the hardest part to learn. The rest of it feels like I already understand it, and intuitively I've really like delved into a lot of these concepts.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Grace?
Right. So I'm Grace Sunderland. I'm a 6-wing-5, possibly self-preservation first in the Enneagram. And I actually got into Myers-Briggs. I first took the test and I scored as an ISFJ or ESFJ as the very first time. And I didn't really resonate with it too much. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Eventually I took it later and I got INFJ, and then I started looking into the functions and I was like, man, this is a real thing. And it was kind of interesting, but then actually when I discovered Meghan's videos, like how much depth she was going into about the functions, it made so much sense to me. And actually when I started talking to her, consulting with her, I guess, on certain questions and getting her mentorship, Meghan helped me to realize that I was actually an ENFJ, and everything finally clicked into place. And I've been so interested in this Myers-Briggs theory, and I just, even in my own life, I've just been realizing how much it's helped me in my relationships with my family. And, you know, especially FE versus FI, understanding FI and TE users has been like the most incredible thing ever. And I'm so grateful for Myers-Briggs and the whole community.
Thank you. Lonnie?
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm Lonnie. Nice to meet everybody. I'm an ENFJ. More most recently, I've been typed correctly by Denzel as an ENFJ. I first got into MBTI back in 2016, and I was just really, I've always been like curious just about like learning about myself and kind of like, you know, self-help improvement stuff. And I remember just Googling like different personality tests, and then I found like the 16 personalities test. And I got INFJ the first time, and I kind of just stuck with that. And then I started to like watch a whole bunch of YouTubers and just like different YouTube channels and start learning about Carl Jung and the functions and all that different stuff. And then like 2018, I think that's when I came across Megan's channel. And then I came across Denzel's channel as well. And a lot of other bunch of people in like the type Twitter community. And I just started learning a lot. My Enneagram is an Enneagram 3 wing 2. So for me, like, I think it fits me well, like looking just like how I operate and how I act. Like, I definitely feel like I have a much better understanding of myself since being in the type community, and I learned a lot from everyone else around me. Is there anything else I should say?
I think that's good.
Is that good for now? Okay.
Yeah, sure. We've got lots of other questions. But
All
yeah,
right.
so I discovered that I was an ENFJ by taking a personality test whenever I was graduating high school, sort of existential crisis mode. I actually also discovered Personality Cafe then and just sort of joined every Facebook group I could. I was a big part of NF Geeks back then as well, which was a forum. And yeah, I think a lot of you guys, if you follow my channel, have probably heard a lot of this, but I am a 2 wing 3 sexual social. I've been pretty much obsessed with type ever since I found out about it. So that's about it. So the first question I have here is, what are some of your hobbies?
Right. I really like to write spoken word poetry. Because I like, you know, being able to, I think a lot in images, pictures, symbols, stuff like that. And I really love articulation. And so when I have an opinion on something, and I'm just trying to find a way to express it, and if it's an ability to express it in like an artistic form, then that's something that I would leap on. And so yeah, I really like doing spoken words, writing spoken word poetry. I like to play the piano, and I also like to skateboard. Well, yeah, skateboard, longboard, stuff like that. Workout, just anything, I guess, being in my body. So I'd say things like that. Writing rap music is the same thing, I guess, as like poetry. Just have to change the structure a little bit. So those are a little bit of my hobbies, I'd say.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of my hobbies are very extroverted sensing oriented. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I was like, I think I did a lot more artistic, like painting, oil painting, and like writing and stuff. I was an English major, so I did a lot of reading and writing. And then like probably in my mid 20s, I probably switched, and I kind of became like obsessed with doing fitness related things. And so I kind of went through the whole gamut of different, well, I wouldn't say the whole gamut, but a lot of different, like I tried out a lot of things. I tried out cycling, which ended up doing road cycling with like a group, which happened to be a lot of ISTPs, I feel like. And then also high intensity training and weightlifting, and then personal training, and then eventually running, and that's kind of, and ice skating. But running has kind of been where I found my personal like zen. So that in terms of physical fitness, but also in terms of, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of books on tape about psychology. And now I'm getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling, it kind of, you know, aligns with that. So it is still fun for me, but it'll probably at some point become less fun.
So I don't know, it's because I have a 7 fix, but I've tried freaking everything. I feel like hobbies, like I played baseball throughout college, violin, chess is a hobby. I guess I love debating, and so that really shines when I'm writing essays, papers for my classes, which I guess is a hobby, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. I've tried so many freaking things.
Yeah.
So for me, I agree, Drew. I love so many things. I'm like addicted to trying new things. I really love anything artistic. When I was growing up, music was my main thing, always music and dancing and musical theater and any fun way like that to express myself. Always loved art, fine art as well, but that was more of my hobby, whereas music was, you know, you don't really have a profession when you're growing up, but you know, that was more like almost my career focus. As well as art history, you know, philosophy. I would say philosophizing is my biggest.
Yep.
I really related to Denzel in that I love articulating. So I'm writing constantly. I love writing. I love having deep conversations with Megan and other friends. I love to paint and dance and spend a lot of time outside and go camping. I love just lounging around in the grass, drinking some delicious coffee or something and listening to good music and hanging out with friends. Researching all of the weird topics I'm super interested in. I can just go down the rabbit hole for hours or days just researching things and reading. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's so funny. I gotta say, I'm probably on, you know, a similar line to you, Brenna and Denzel, that like I feel like my main hobby is kind of philosophizing. Because I used to think, you know, when people ask me if I had a hobby, I used to go like, well, not really. I don't really do anything. I kind of just sit around and think a lot and, you know, read things, write things, talk to people. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it does feel kind of like a hobby because it is so much fun to just have conversations about the things that I've been interested in and read about things, especially, you know, as a student, I really enjoy learning what I am in psychology, especially now that it's my senior year. I've just been learning so much that's really interesting and useful. And I love learning about personality like more than anything. And so, gotta say, it's my biggest hobby. But you know, growing up, I would always say like acting was something that I really love to do, though I haven't really had the opportunity to do that as much recently. And as I've been home this semester with my family, I've started to go out on walks with them and get away from my sedentary lifestyle. And I've really enjoyed doing that, like going for walks around sort of the reservoir and woods near our house and actually being out in nature has been very fun, even though I you know, I didn't realize how much fun that would be. So yeah, those are kind of my hobbies.
All right. So some of my hobbies would be, I kind of like everybody else. Can you guys hear me well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah, some of my hobbies would be, I kind of have like a lot. So the main ones I would say probably cooking and baking. Like they said, philosophizing. I love to philosophize and just like have like really great conversations with people. I enjoy like making podcasts, doing YouTube videos, stuff like that. I like being able to like share my thoughts and my ideas. I also enjoy playing sports. I don't know if going to concerts is like a hobby, but that's kind of like a new hobby of mine. Like I love going to concerts, like some of my favorite artists. What else? I love listening to music. I don't really know if you could count that as a hobby, but
Oh
I love
yeah.
listening to music and just like, making playlists and stuff like that. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, playing basketball, that's like the only sport I really actually play like consistently. But I would say those are like some of my main hobbies for the most part. But I really do like enjoy like just having a great conversation with somebody and just being able to like share my ideas. Like I would say that's probably like top of the list of like my hobbies.
It's so interesting because it seems like just from hearing everyone talk, like we maybe even perceive hobby as like an active thing that you do, and like since SE isn't super strong for us, it's like but like it does also seem like all of us need some sort of SE thing to do, like in nature, or like running or skateboarding, like something to get out of your head at least sometimes. Yeah, I kind of am not great. Like I tried sports growing up, but failed at it pretty miserably. Like I just never really liked it, but I've been trying to enjoy more like hikes and things like that. But for me, like music was my main thing. Similar to what Brenna said, I almost viewed it as a little profession growing up. Started doing this choir when I was like 8 and did voice lessons and stuff. So music is like my first love always. So like listening to music, going to concerts, it's like I won't even go out that much, but when I go out, it's because I'm going to a concert. Philosophizing with friends, going to a coffee shop, or sitting on a porch of a friend's house, or if I finally get a porch, sitting out in the sun, drinking coffee or tea, just chilling. I would say, obviously personality type. I'm really into like astrology, tarot, learning about metaphysical things, honestly just reading and consuming content, podcasts, YouTube, and thinking about, what is the meaning of life or something like that. Like spirituality stuff is fun too, psychology, and just self-development in general. I think a lot of you guys would relate to this, but I'm just such a nerd when it comes to self-development, to where I want to like kind of follow who are the people that have their own theories and like see like who is coming out with new theory. I don't know. I just like to kind of be on top of that. And I've recently started to enjoy cooking a lot more, especially since about 3 years ago, I stopped eating meat. So I got more into like plant-based cooking. I know Lonnie does a lot of posting his recipes. That's so cool. But
thank you.
yeah, and I've been starting to really be interested in business stuff, which I never thought that I would be. But
yeah, I should have said something about that. That's Meghan and I's biggest hobby, is talking about business.
Yeah, and sort of just innovation, startup stuff in general is fun to talk about. But really, I think human nature, and we probably would all agree here, like figuring out things about human nature is like the number one thing. Like these are all just different ways, to do that. But
and it's that kind of all brought us to MBTI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I agree.
So, see, the next question is, what does your dream world look like?
That's a great question. That's a good question.
So I would say definitely, I always like tweet about it and talk about it on my YouTube channel. It's a world where everyone's scratching each other's back to the point where nobody has to worry about scratching their own back. Because I feel like we, as a society, I just see so many opportunities where we can, think about other people and assist them rather than just like, being self-centered, not necessarily selfish all the time, but just like self-centered all the time. And I don't know, like that stuff like really like gets to me. So what I see in society a lot of times is that even with right now, like as we're recording this video, we're all in like quarantine due to like the coronavirus, COVID-19 and everything. And one of the things that happened was people raided, supermarkets and stuff like that. And I understand it, like, hey, you wanted to stock up for your family or for yourself and everything. but then also it's like, dang, like toilet paper is like out and everything. It's like, did you not stop to like think about, you know, like other people? And then of course that leads then to, it's like a domino effect where like other people now are like, well, Denzel, you know, we can't, you know, we have to fend for ourselves, because if we don't, who's going to look out for us? You see how they rated the toilet paper? So now I have to also stock up on my toilet paper before other people are. And it's like, but that's just going to continue the cycle. So it's difficult. This is an ideal world for me. And I see idealism as like a carrot, you know, in front of the donkey that, you know, you just keep on walking toward, and you'll make distance, but you're never going to get that carrot a lot of times. So like, it's an ideal, but like in a perfect world, like that's how I'd see society, where we are very considerate of each other to the point where we don't have to worry like, oh, well, who's going to have my back? You know, we can just have each other's back. And yeah, that's what I dream of.
Love it.
I totally interpreted this question the wrong way when I was thinking about it. Yeah.
You could just say how you did interpret it, though, even if it's different.
Yeah. So I was thinking more of like, how do you dream in terms of like, how do you imagine things? Not necessarily like, what's the world that you would wish would exist. But yeah, I find that like, because that's something that I think about a lot. I've made a video about it. I imagine a lot of kind of like jumping into other people's perspectives, and then try to flip and like see how they might view like especially if I'm like in a romantic situation, like that's what I think of that I do the most, of where like I want to kind of like, I want the person to like me, so I try to like imagine what they are thinking of me. So I'll try to like, it's like I like pause and like everything becomes quiet, and then I like imagine myself being them and then like seeing me. And so I think that's interesting because of the introverted intuition. Whenever people talk about creating these imaginary worlds, dream worlds, which is what I thought of, and when I think of dream worlds, that's just what comes up for me in particular. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of like, I had like a very specific kind of idealistic scenario where I was like this like woman warrior, and I would write like stories in my mind about what that would look like, and how I would be, and like sometimes I would actually act it out in front of a mirror by myself. So to me, that's what a dream or my dream world looks like.
I love that. That's amazing.
All right. Actually, what Denzel talked about with the carrot thing was kind of interesting to me, because like one of my like favorite quotes, I guess, is like, in the pursuit of perfection we can attain excellence, which is kind of three of me. But it's like it's like everyone's can be like, you know, the world can't be perfect, blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, yeah, but we can always move towards it. You can always, like, there's gonna be some point that's the best we can get, like achieving excellence. I don't know. It's like I don't really know what my dream world looks like, although my dream home is Canada. But yeah, what Denzel said pretty much. Yeah, I don't know.
Fine.
Cool. So I will kind of combine what all of you guys said, because I also, Leeann, kind of originally, when I first saw the word, like the phrase dream world, I spend so much time in my own dream world that I immediately kind of like went to my dream world. But I also care so profoundly about bettering society and the dream world, you know, that I dream of, for society. That something that feels really strong to me is that the dream world that is in our heads is kind of that carrot dangling in front of us, and that it is a reality. And I'm a very spiritual person, and I do a lot of astral travel and interesting things. And to me, my dream world is a very real location I go to, and I receive a lot of guidance from that dream world. And I try to really embody that and bring it down to earth. And so going off of that, my dream world for how I wish that the world could be. And I hope that we can get to this eventually. You know, maybe we'll always be moving towards that. But for me, it's really about everyone being so tuned into who they are and becoming so self-aware and intentionally transforming themselves that they can be truly sovereign from a place of real integration and embodying that integration as a constant practice. And when everyone is that integrated and is able to be that sovereign person, then you are able to really see other people as the true self that they are, and to consider other people and to not just be focused on yourself or your needs, especially not from just like a fear-based panic mentality of I need what I need, but understanding that everyone else is also a part of who we are. And so caring for the other is caring for yourself. And I really truly believe that all of that comes back to having deep self-awareness and integrating all aspects of yourself, which cognitive typology and the functions really helps with. And just empowering everyone to truly take responsibility for their power and their impact. I think especially now with what's going on in the world, I mean, and it's not new really, right? If anything, there's a new awareness of what's going on in the world. But with what is going on in the conversations that everyone's having, I feel like especially now it's super important that everyone owns up to the fact that we do have power and impact, regardless of if you want to admit it or not. And if you don't admit it or take responsibility for that, then your impact might be negative. And more often than not, it probably will be negative. So I guess my dream world is one where everyone truly turns within and owns who they are and takes responsibility for themselves. And in doing so is able to then really benefit everyone else because of it. Yeah.
Wow, that is
It's a great response.
Thanks. I mean, you know, that's my biggest hobby, thinking about all of this.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. It's an awesome dream world. You guys all had awesome stuff to say on that. So I kind of relate to like the idea of, you know, everybody kind of scratching each other's backs and we'll all be taken care of. You know, when I was younger, I actually believed it was true, and you know, I've sort of realized that it's not, but it's still my hope. You know, when I was very young, I just sort of assumed that everyone was just doing everything that they could to be there for each other. And I was, you know, always available to other people, thinking that they were always available to me. And, you know, you never really have a sense of lack or anything. You can just like freely express to everybody else, and everyone else is able to sort of freely express to you. So I guess, I mean, one of the things in my dream world is like everyone would just like be really open to each other. Like you'd never have to worry about like, oh, is this okay? And you know, people would just be very straightforward and honest, but also like completely supportive of each other. Because when people are supportive of each other, like you never have to you know, like what Denzel was saying, you never have to like fight with each other or be like worried about protecting your own interests, because if everybody has each other's best interests at heart, then you're just able to be very free and everyone's able to do exactly what they want to do. And I love what you said, Brenna, about like developing yourself and like being aware of the impact that you want to have and things like that. That is really important. And what's weird is I guess like in my dream world, I wish that I could be more impactful than I am, because I feel like I have a desire to be impactful, but sometimes I feel like I can't yet fulfill it. So hopefully I would, you know, have like more of the tools to like have a greater impact somehow. You know, that's one of the hopes for myself, is just to become, you know, maybe more sure of myself, more confident, or like projecting the things that I want other people to be, instead of, you know, I feel like sometimes it's easy to conform to the way that other people are and sort of shrink back and think, oh, well, this is the world we live in, you know. So I would love to like in the future like sort of go against that and be really open so that other people can be, I guess. I don't know if I worded that right, but
Oh, you're already on your way. You are already doing it.
Aw,
Cool. So it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what does my dream world look like? Honestly, like I don't really think about that question a lot, but I would say my dream world is very idealistic in ways. Like I remember when I was younger, like I used to always like try to see the best in people and look at life as more have a glass half like full. How do you say it? Glass half full? Yeah. I always feel like I looked at life like that, but now I think as I've gotten older, I don't think my dream world has kind of suffered, but I think it's kind of like helped me kind of elevate in my life because I kind of realized that in a sense, like everybody has a dream world, but there's a fine line between escapism and also like still being connected to reality. And I feel like sometimes when I was younger, like I used to try to run away and kind of just retreat into my mind, into like in my mind where everything's like perfect and like everybody works together and everybody's nice. But then I kind of had to start to realize like, okay, well, everybody doesn't operate like that. You know what I'm saying? So I think for me, my dream world, it helps me when I feel like life feels tough, where I feel like I don't have any control. It's like a safe space I can kind of retreat to. And this is also like where I get a lot of my great like ideas for things. Like I'm a big believer in like, you know, we create our own reality and the power of the imagination is like really strong. So I would say my dream world is pretty cool. Like a lot of times when I'm doing things like cooking, for example, like I'll just get ideas for something like, oh, what if I made this? Or like, what if I like took something that I see somebody else do and then put my own spin on it. And then like, I'll kind of do that like in my little dream world or whatever. And then like when I go out into the world and I do it, or I go into the kitchen and I make the recipe, like it comes to fruition. So I think for me, my dream world is just like a great way for me to have a sense of control. And I think especially like with everything that's going on in the world right now, I think people kind of have to retreat into that. You know, it kind of gives you a sense of control and measure like, okay, this is happening outside of me, but there's always a part of me that I can kind of retreat back into. And I also like the analogy that Denzel said about the carrot and like how I think like that, having an eye is kind of like, it is kind of idealistic in ways. Because I feel like when I look at the world and I look at society, I'm always looking at how it can be better or the positive. And most people are not really looking at it like that. It's more of a pessimistic of like, well, this is just the reality. This is just the way it is, you know, focusing on the negatives. But I feel like if you look at all the greatest movements in history, if you look at all the people that did amazing things like Martin Luther King, Jesus, you know, all these different leaders, like they had to have some type of like idealism to an extent, some type of new way of thinking to like push forward things. Because if they would have always just went with, well, that's just the way it is, that's just the way the world is, then like they would have never made any, you know, change. And I feel like people like us, like we kind of have to not feel ashamed of having that and realize that it's also like a really great power, you know what I'm saying? So I guess that's how I would define my dream world. It's a really long-winded response.
Love that. And I completely agree with mostly what everyone said, honestly. But like even just the idea of having like your North Star or shoot for the moon, land on the star sort of thing. Like I do think there's a practical element to the idealism as well, because you wouldn't really go for it if you didn't think it was possible. You're like setting your sights lower. So what came to mind for me when it comes to like this dream world is that I want everyone to feel completely comfortable being themselves, like that they don't have to change themselves for anyone, like that they are just inherently lovable and they have these inherent gifts. And I feel like similar to what Denzel said about this, everyone scratching each other's back sort of thing. I think that everyone desires to be of service or useful in some way. Like we can kind of think of that as an FE thing, but everybody to some extent wants like, you know, something to be useful in society, like to have that purpose. And I kind of think of it as like everyone, if they were to feel completely comfortable being themselves and they can sort of get into their formation or their position, letting the world really know who they are. And then we all can sort of start scratching each other's back. We all could be of service. We all could be like where we're meant to be, it seems. And I guess yeah, I just believe everyone has a role to play, and everybody, you know, I also would just say, as far as like the dream world goes, comparing that to the world that we live in now, I would say that emotions tend to be dismissed far too often in this world. And that's definitely something that increased emotional intelligence, not like for yourself, but also for others, so that, a dream world would be one that works better, systems that work better, education, healthcare, like all of that stuff, where, if everyone had the mindset of that they are looking at it from an abundant perspective of like win-wins as opposed to what's in it for me. And if everybody did that, then like the thing is I know this sounds really idealistic, but there literally wouldn't be conflict if everybody took it from the perspective of, I'm going to include your needs in with mine, and I'm going to make this win-win. If we were all willing to do that, then we would be, taking each other's needs and perspectives as our own. But, that's the hard part, is that, not everyone's willing to, and we all have our free will to do whatever we want to do. So, yeah, so it's a balance between that sort of idealism, but I do think, we could push toward there. And I know Denzel mentioned you wanted to add something really quick.
Yeah. And it was actually going off like what Brenna was saying. Like, first of all, it was really cool how Leeann like interpreted it differently.
Yeah.
Like, that immediately fascinated me, and I'm so glad that you shared your perspective on how you interpreted it and everything. Because that also, I feel like that says a lot about you as a person in a good way. And I think that, especially since we're all talking about how like it's idealism, looking back at like Kiersey's temperament as NFs, we're the idealists. And I'm thinking about ideals a lot, because I realize that a lot of my ideals are seemingly unobtainable, but eventually I am able to get there. And the way that I see it is like, especially being ENFJs, having NI as our second function, and then SE is our tertiary. It's like all of our answers, we have to dream these things first. In order to dream it, once we've dreamt up this vision, then we're able to impose it upon the world. And so the more time that we spend building up this dream world in our minds and envisioning how this world is supposed to look like, we start to breathe it outwards, and then we start to like bring life to that in our world. And that's where the SE tertiary, and we start like implementing that vision. That's where they're bringing about our FE. And so I feel like that's also like why, like I know that there's like controversy between like whether or not Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela are INFJ or ENFJ. I personally believe that they were both ENFJs, and I believe that's exactly what they did. Like, they had built up that vision, and then they imposed it upon the world. Like, Martin Luther King Jr.'s like most famous speech is, "I have a dream. Like, I have a vision that this is what's going to be." And back then, I do believe that he saw it as a carrot, but he still was striding toward it. He was like, yo, I might not be able to ever get this carrot, but somebody's going to get it. And he was still striding toward that. And so I see that as like, just like what we were saying, like, there's a quote, like, if you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land amongst the stars. If you really like still go after that carrot, and you look behind, it's like, wow, I've covered so much distance, even though I still haven't really reached that carrot. And the only reason why ideals are that carrot that you can never really get is because as you start to approach that ideal thing, an ideal in and of itself, I don't know the exact Webster dictionary definition for it, but it's something that is like seemingly unobtainable. So it's no longer an ideal if you've now obtained it. So the idea is to have a further developed ideal. So it's like, okay, now that we've obtained this, I have a new ideal world, which is a progressive way of continuing to get things like better. And that's why,
That reminded me of, I think, a really important thing about ENFJs that I've noticed is that we don't really operate super transactionally. At least we can, but I think where people can maybe misinterpret is we don't expect to get the carrot. Like, that's not the point. It's not like we're doing things so that we get, I mean, everyone does to some extent, but it's the way that you were describing it, it kind of is about the journey. It is about the ideal. We don't really measure, like, I think a lot of people, they might think, if I don't get the carrot, then I'm gonna, give up or something. But it's like this constant chase that we tend to go for. And, Martin Luther King, he died before he saw a lot of, and we still aren't perfect with that now, but it's like, he did what he wanted to do. It wasn't like, oh, I didn't do it, so now I'm done. It was that ideal was like more important.
Right. He planted the seed.
Yeah, he planted the seed. That's what vision is. Like, once you're able
Exactly.
to have that ideal, you're envisioning what that seed is supposed to be. You start planting seeds around the world, and you might not be able to see the fruit of that plant once it comes up. But by the time that you've planted it, maybe you might die, but like your grandchildren will be able to experience those things. They receive that fruit, and then they will plant those seeds from there, and it becomes this like cycle of a vision that is continuing to be developed. So now we do have a world where little black boys and little black girls, like, and white people, we're all like together.
Right.
We're still continuing to develop that. Like, we don't want to stop there. Like, okay, we're not just get this carrot. It's like, what's the next thing to do? And I think we had a conversation one time on Twitter about how ENFJs don't necessarily conform to society, but they're always like ahead of it in a way, because once we finally reached where, this is what this ENFJ was talking about like 5 years ago. It was like, well, now we're talking about this.
Right.
I'm never really like satisfied with how society looks like, because but it's like we're happy that we are happy with where it is, but we're not satisfied with it. If that's how
it's like there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
It's like it's always about the journey. It's like you said, it's not about the carrot, but it's like about the potential. Like, I remember it's this guy I follow who's like I don't want to say he's like an inspirational speaker on Instagram, but he has this quote. He was like, I want to be able to, like, what is it? I forgot how he said it, but it's something about potential. And just like what Denzel's saying is about, like, it's always about chasing the potential of something. So it's never about reaching the final destination of like, oh, I made it to the mountaintop. It's more so like the journey, and like you said, planting the seeds.
It's never ending.
Yeah. And also, sorry if I can just add real quick, that as a 3-wing 4 also, where I'm supposed to be really like achievement focused, right? I think a big theme of what all of you guys are talking about is that we care about society. We care about the other person. We care about the collective. We care about the betterment of society and our family, like everyone else. And so, all of my achievements that I strive for have really very little to do with me. It's not about me. I don't care about, yes, I have to meet my own needs in order to make sure that I'm fully equipped to show up for the world. But, really it's like Martin Luther King, all of these things that we're talking about, it's not about us. So it doesn't matter if we get to the top of the mountain or get the carrot, because that's not even the point. And so I think a big miscommunication or struggle I have sometimes with other people who aren't like us, maybe, they don't even see the point of this like high ideal if they can't get to it, right? Which is what some of you guys have already kind of talked about. And I find that really frustrating because it's like they won't even want to try to get there if it's not obtainable. It's like, that's not even the point.
Yeah. And then we're called naive.
Yeah. And it's not naive at all. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sorry, did someone say? Oh, I think this is actually a really good segue into the next question. I really liked Denzel, the metaphor about seeds, because, so I just want to say, answer this the best you can. If you don't know the literal specific answer, no worries. But if you do, you can share that too. In what way do you wish to impact or elevate society? And I think, we can kind of think about this as those seeds that we're planting. So
this is a great question.
Yeah.
I totally see it like just like how I was already talking about my ideal world. So now I see that I think of seeds all the time. Like I see seeds in everything. And so even now, as I'm like maybe like speaking, I'm thinking of, okay, I'm literally spraying seeds, well, not literally, figuratively, spraying seeds into other people's minds, where they land, going to grow, how's it going to be watered, stuff like that. So my coaching is
Depends on their soil sometimes.
right. So
Facts.
it's like, okay, these are my ideas and stuff like that, and I'm hoping that they will sprout so that all around the world I'll just see like this greenery of the things that I've planted that'll hopefully be able to feed society in what I personally think, because every ENFJ, they have their like own TI of like what is best, that TIFE. And so I personally think like, back to like my dream world thing, I'm planting those seeds with the people that I coach, with the people on my YouTube channel, people that I'm tweeting to, all of that. Like, this is what I think about life. This is what I think that life should be. I'm welcoming everyone to come and calibrate it. But like, yeah, I'm planting those seeds of like, hey guys, we should be very considerate of each other. Hey guys, let's not be judgmental. A huge thing that I'm always talking about is understanding someone else's perspective. I think that's probably like the biggest thing that I maybe teach about, because I think that goes hand in hand with being considerate. So if someone like, I'm not really a fan of like, people who, it's like, well, that's dumb. It's like, what? Like if you like try to understand, like, okay, check their math. Like, where did we dissect and like go differently? And then even if you two still disagree, at least it's like, all right, no, I understand why this person believes this. I personally disagree, but I can debate from their standpoint why they believe it. And if anything, I can help like, calibrate it, or they can even help me calibrate mine. But let's not be judgmental of how they think. And so, yeah, that's like one of the seeds I'm trying to like, spread. Like, hey, let's be more inviting to people so they can be more welcome to speak their thoughts about things. And then we can address them in a more kind-mannered way that's still also helping us to operate better as a society.
Yeah, so, I appreciate the analogy of the seed, and there's obviously like a time to plant and a time to water. And I think what Megan was saying about the soil is a really good point, because if we're, trying to plant a seed and the soil is not ready, and that goes to SE, because that's about timing. But yeah, I mean, I really like that point. This for me is very similar to what Megan said in the last question, which is just creating space for people to be who they authentically are, outside of the expectations that have been put on them. Because that's, I think, for all of us, or I'll speak for myself, that I've known that other ENFJs have expressed similar sentiments, that sometimes it can be a work in process for us to be able to express ourselves fully, to the extent of who we are, and have people really understand that. So I think because of that, it's an empathetic response to wanting to have other people to feel comfortable in who they are.
Absolutely. And can I just say really quick too, I was thinking as I was talking, and I don't know if you'd relate to this, that it was kind of Enneagram 2 of me, that I, wanted to tell people this, because it's kind of what I want to be told,
I was thinking that too. I was like, wow, that's a very 2 statement.
Yeah.
Definitely tracking the patterns a little bit on the enneagrams, through the disintegration.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
So like, I don't know how, the end point that I'm going to, like how I'm going to affect society or whatever, but I know that I can like control like the little things. And so like something like I always struggled with was like, what have I done? Like what value has my life had to society? It's always something I've really, really struggled with. And as I've matured, I've learned that like, maybe like I'm not doing anything grand, but like going to class and like learning what I can, because it might someday be able to translate into me helping someone or doing something that would make me feel fulfilled or satisfied and helping others. And along that way, I can control the little things of like, you know, if I'm going to a grocery, the supermarket, like right now, it's chaotic there, but I can control how I'm treating the cashier whose life is being hell right now. And so like yeah, like I don't know the eventual end point, but there's things along the way that I can control. So yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Drew. I relate to that as a 3 also, especially that like, oh no, how am I impacting the world kind of existential crisis going on forever. But so I agree with that. And even before you said that, what I was going to say is really that I want to show up with treating every single person I see ever with such a deep respect for them and like a reverence for them, like not just a little bit of respect, like a true humble reverence of them being such a divine human, because every human is, and every human deserves to, like Megan was saying, like feel so safe. And with kind of that bigger goal and carrot dangling that I always have in my dream world, where everyone can be integrated and sovereign, you can't be integrated if you're ashamed of any part of yourself. You have to feel safe to feel and know who you are and express your emotions and your pain and your trauma, and then also be able to work through that so you can truly know what's so magical about yourself, because everyone has all of those magical qualities. So I think that, you know, I want to have this big grand impact on the world if I could, but I know that all I can control is my state of being in every present moment. And with every person I come across, I just want to be like the embodiment of this calm, respectful, honoring of other people and the wisdom that they bring to the world. So that way, the more people feel that way, the more people feel that safety, the more I think it'll spread out and the compassion will be contagious, hopefully more contagious than COVID-19. But yeah.
Wow. I mean, again, beautifully said, guys. I relate a lot to you. I relate to you like 100%, you know, about like, man, am I not doing enough? And I kind of had this realization a while ago that, you know, for now, all I can do is impact the people like around me, like my family and my friends. And I think the thing that for me, I feel like is, I guess, like planting a seed is I feel like I've always had this opportunity to help people to change their mindset, because for some reason, maybe this is an ENFJ thing, I'm always just seeing like exactly everybody's perspectives and that they're missing each other. And I'm hoping somehow, like, I don't know, be almost like a mediator in a way. I guess not to change somebody's mind, but, you know, to show them, you know, like, hey, this person meant, you know, kind of to like facilitate understanding between people and really to help open people's minds to perspectives like of one another and just perspectives in general that they hadn't seen before. Because I feel like I almost never like make sense to people, and I think that's for a few reasons. But one of them is because I you know, just like that perspective thing. I'm hoping to show people like a new way to conceptualize, you know, something that has been set in their mind for so long and is maybe outdated or maybe isn't considering somebody else. I don't know, things like that. But I also related a lot to what you guys were saying about encouraging people to be fully themselves and being sort of like facilitating, like being there, like to be them. Because I want to be a counselor, and that's something I really hope to do as a counselor, you know, in the future, in a couple years, is just be there, like welcoming someone and like completely supporting them, letting them be them, and hopefully like the more they express themselves to me, like we can express ourselves to each other. And if that, like, here's like the ideal thing. I mean, I don't think I can do this, but if that were to continue, like the ripple effect would be there would just be so much more open communication between everybody. And I think that's something that I'm striving to plant little seeds for.
Love it.
Wow, that's a great response. For me, I think I've done a pretty good job of having impact. I kind of have a short story. So I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and like basically my whole life, like I was in that religion. And 2 years ago, I left the religion due to a lot of things that I found out and learned. And like just me living on my own for the past 2 years and, you know, kind of going through this whole spiritual awakening and like finding myself, you know, it's really made me have to like go within myself and question things. And I feel like my impact, I feel like I have a good ability to, I feel like I'm good at seeing like the common perspectives that most people have. And I'm kind of good at like filling in that space and being like a bridge between different ways that people think. And I think I want to have an impact just in just showing people that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to have a difference of opinion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go against each other. You know, like growing up in a religion, it's very like heavy, I would say FE culture, like growing up in a Jehovah's Witness, you know, like nobody really kind of wants to rock the boat or have their own difference of opinion. And I think for me, just sharing my thoughts, like whether it's through my podcast, my YouTube videos, or through my tweets, or, you know, just whatever, just day-to-day conversations, I do think that people can see that I kind of have my own sense of thinking, and I want to like encourage that people, because I see so many people that have similar ideas to me, or like they have great ambitions. They want to do things. They want to, you know, they want to live a big life, but sometimes they're afraid to take that risk because they're afraid of, well, what do my parents think? Or what does society think? Or what does my teacher think? Or what does my manager, you know, like, and I think for me, like what I've experienced in the past few years is like, you have to really like believe in yourself and trust that the universe is going to bring other people with you, or like surround you with other people that will like benefit you and help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, like I want to have that impact. And just, I may not be the one to like fix the world, kind of like Tupac said, that quote that Tupac has. He's like, I may not change the world, but I hope I plant the seed, or I hope something about how he inspires the mind or something like that for the next person to do it. I forgot how the quote
I've
goes.
never typed him, but I wouldn't be
That's what it
surprised
is.
if Tupac
Yeah,
was
He's in
Denzel,
you. He's in you.
yeah, Denzel I think he knows the quote. But yeah, that's the main quote. And I really resonate with that, because I feel like I'm not going to change the world 100%. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to be in this body on earth for who knows how long, 80 something years. But with everything that I'm doing, whether it's through cooking or baking or like whatever avenue it's in, I want to show people like, yes, you can do this too. Yes, you can believe in yourself. Yes, you can be yourself and express yourself. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to conform and feel less and feel down. You know what I'm saying? I like what, I forgot her name, but she said about how if you want to integrate yourself, you can't be ashamed of yourself. And you have to really like embrace everything that you've been through. I'm sorry that it's loud in the background. I'm outside. Wow, it's really loud.
It's,
But
Lonnie, I wanted to just say that everything you just said will change the world, and it is it is so powerful. And I know you already know that, but I just wanted to be like, yes, amen, yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, but that's how I would say in a nutshell. Like, I just want to show people that you can do anything that you put your mind to. Like, we have a lot more power than what we've been told. So,
yeah,
that's
and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you done?
No, that's it.
Kind of just going off of that, what I was going to say is that what I'm really realizing is that, so I feel like as I've gotten older, well, I get more and more clarity every day when it comes to the actual specifics of what my purpose is and what I'll like literally do. But ever since I was like in school, I wanted to make people feel better, you know? And I think it's kind of interesting hearing what everyone says is like, every ENFJ, like our TI is inferior. So we start out with just thinking, well, I want it to be better. You know what I mean? Like we kind of start out, and then it's like every day you inch a little closer to like the sort of TI of what you think about that. And also I was thinking too, since we're NI over SE, like, yeah, kind of like what Brenna said to Lonnie of like, hey, you talking about this will change the world. It's like, we will change the world through our ideas, and that is an impact. And, similar to what you guys have said, I mean, I've really realized, especially over the past couple of years, that I want to just continue to be a content creator. I want to like have more courses. I want to do like more like speaking engagements, books, podcasts, just anything. And kind of going along with my favorite pastime, philosophizing with people. And we all do that. And I guess going off of how Brenna was validating that to Lonnie, it's like, I do think that we all as ENFJs have this power to sort of change people's mindsets in a way, or like bring about a new thought. And, we aren't censors. So we shouldn't be putting the pressure on ourselves to do in the same way, because it still is potent. So yeah.
Tell
I
that
guess
to a 3.
Yeah. Sorry. What?
I said tell that to a 3.
Oh yeah. So it's like we are doing, but maybe it's like, okay, you wrote a book, or you did a podcast, or you did a life coaching or something, or you are doing psychology and you're a counselor. It's like, yeah, I guess my purpose, how I wish to elevate the world, I'm just getting more and more clear that I really want to use personality type theory, and also Jungian individuation, shadow work, kind of combining that in various ways. And I'm sure that will be other things, but yeah, just echoing a lot of your guys' thoughts. So, I did go through and delete a couple of the questions that we planned to kind of keep this going, but I do want to keep going. But the next question is, what were you like as a child? Or just a little bit of what you're like.
So I know that a huge thing that all of my relatives, my parents, pretty much everyone that knows me, just kept always bring up from my childhood is like, Denzel, you talked. And it's like, and like, that's like the number one thing that anybody would say. And it's like, oh, well now, that's my, I'm getting a communications degree. So, but yeah, I was apparently like always like talking. I was very focused on verbal dexterity apparently, because and when I think of like talking, and I think that me and Lonnie, we actually like, were discussing this in our profiling session. When people say that, someone likes to talk, I think of someone who just like a child who's just like talking just for the sake of it. And that's not necessarily like a bad thing, but for me, I more so liked to converse. And that was a big game changer when I found that out, because all of my family, they were just saying like, oh, hey, you like to talk, you like to talk. So I was just thinking, I always just thought like, oh, I just talked even when nobody was around. But then after asking a little bit more, they're like, no, like, because I finally started asking like, what did I talk about? Like, you always just say I like to talk. Like, oh, what didn't you talk about? You ask lots of questions, and you're always trying to like, figure something out about this. And I was like, oh, so you mean I like to have conversations? Like, yeah, you talk to the police officer that's walking past, and then you start asking him about why this and why that. And I'm like, oh, well, then that's, to me, that like brought a little bit of flavor to things. So, yeah, I think that was like one of the biggest things that I can take away from like my childhood, is that I was really, I apparently learned how to read at the age of like 2.5. And I was just like, all of my teachers would just talk about like how much I liked to talk and how articulate I was. And so I think that's like very cool as an ENFJ. Like, oh, that says a lot. And definitely an extrovert
Sure.
that.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was in kindergarten, I had this, like, I got put in the corner desk, because I was talking too much. And I was looking through my old report cards, and yeah, I had this one kindergarten teacher. She would always complain that I was like talking to the boys in my class. But anyway, yeah, so that's a thing for me as well. Also, my mom, when I've asked her before, she said that you were like bubbles. I don't know if she mean bubbly, but just bubbles. And my mom's ISFJ, so I know she said to me before that you were kind of like something that I didn't expect and didn't really entirely know how to handle. And then also I was a little bossy, so that was another aspect of my personality that came out when I was a kid. I know that I've read like other ENFJs, like some are like very like, you know, not that way, and so I think that's an interesting distinction. I personally know that I have a specific example of being at on vacation with my two friends who are an ISFP and an ISTP. My two girlfriends growing up, and we had like only so many Pop-Tarts because we went and we bought all this like junk food, and we only had so many Pop-Tarts left, and they were like, oh well, I'm gonna go, or I think it was like the ICP, she's like, I'm gonna go eat a Pop-Tart, and I was like, no you're not, and she's like, well why not, and I'm like, because I already called it in my head. So yeah, that was like an
So
inside
funny.
joke that we had for like the longest time because I called the Pop-Tart in my head.
I love that.
So I guess I kind of had like a unique dynamic with my siblings because my siblings were 10 and 13 years older than me. So like sometimes it's like it was like growing up an only child. Like my sister moved out of the house when I was 8 years old, and then my brother went to college when I was, you know, like 8, you know, same time pretty much. But like they always did things really well in high school and college or not, and so like I always tried to like model myself by my older siblings. Yeah. And actually I think it was like a year or two ago, I was going through like boxes in our basement and found a report card from like the first grade, and like one of the things that my teacher wrote was like very hard on himself, and I was like, you could tell I was a 3 that early. It was but I don't know, I was a little SE monster. I don't know, I was like climbing trees and I was into astrology and rocks, and I don't know, so that was me as a kid.
Yeah, dude, I talked all the time as a kid. But more than just talking, right? I have to say that I always knew that this system was fucked up. Like, I feel like I was born and I was like, nope, no, what is happening here? And I would really call that out all the time. And it would get me in a lot of trouble, especially because I would question a lot of my teachers and they wouldn't understand that I wasn't questioning them as a person. I was questioning like, why are you operating in that way? Or why did you just say that that's a rule when that's obviously a bunch of bullshit? And like, why are you imposing this strict thing that feels really unfair and not okay? Like, and so I would do that constantly. I was like literally kicked out of a youth group when I was a 6th grader. Like I was like sent to detention a lot. And, but then what was weird about that, which maybe this is tangential, but I'm an ENFJ, so we're going with it. I would even call out like the punishments, like, or like the unfairness of me being like this privileged white girl that could get away with shit. And so I would even be like, it almost like fueled my desire to continue wreaking havoc, almost like pushing people's envelopes. But it like would make me more frustrated because I wouldn't get in trouble for a lot of it. And it was like, so just questioning everything. My dad is also super like philosophical, and he would always encourage me to really question everything. So I was really outspoken, but again, I always felt frustrated because Denzel, how you said, you know, that it was like just talking. I often felt like people would think that I was just talking, and I would almost, this might be self-inflated of me to say, but I feel like maybe I wasn't able to articulate it as well when I was young. But I feel like I would be trying to make a very valid point that I wanted a real answer on, and people would just dismiss me as like, oh, silly girl talking about some silly thing. And that's always been really frustrating. And honestly, like, that's carried throughout a lot of my life. I'm 29 years old. I've worked in corporate and agencies and all of these situations where somehow that still feels like a quality that people will try to like put onto me, like, oh, you're just talking. When it's like, no, please listen to what we're discussing. So I don't know, that was really interesting growing up. The other key, I think the other two kind of quick things. One is that I was addicted to trying everything. I was in like 15 million activities. You know, I had to do everything. And I feel really grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. But I tested out, you know, like all of the sports, all of the music, all of the art, everything I could do. And then the other key point of my childhood is that my older sister had a really severe eating disorder and had a lot of anxiety and was really depressed my whole life growing up. And she would really like trigger my mother, and my dad would just kind of remove himself. And so I think a lot of my ENFJ qualities of kind of making everyone feel better and trying to see what's actually going on, understanding everyone's perspectives from different sides, then trying to kind of do that emotional space holding for people, was a huge, huge prominent factor of my entire life growing up, that I've had to kind of deprogram and learn how to come into a healthier way of holding that emotional space for people over the years. But yeah, I think I was kind of a lot to deal with when I was little. Yeah. And probably still am now, but whatever.
Just to throw in that whole like talking thing and like people like not taking it seriously, I honestly feel like that's a huge reason why my sister and I, my younger sister, she's an INFP. I think that's why we're both nines, although I'm a social 9 and she's self-preservation. But yeah, like going into Enneagram and like looking into my trauma and everything, growing up with like African relatives and stuff, they're just like, oh, you know, children are supposed to be seen, not heard kind of thing. And them even saying like, all you did was talk. And it didn't take me, like, I didn't know until 2018 that all the talking was actually me being like inquisitive and challenging certain things rather than just incessant chatter. And so, so y'all weren't even really like valuing it in this way. So
I just wanted to ask everyone really quick, did being told because I said so ever work on you?
No. Never.
Oh, I did want to mention that the one thing my mom will say if you like ask her about me when I was young is that she will say no one has ever been able to tell you what to do ever. Yep. Like including me, like no one.
Yeah, my mom laughs at me. She says that she makes a joke like, if we tell Denzel not to do something, he's gonna go do exactly what we told him not to do.
Right.
I find it funny because all I can go off of is stories that they told me about like how I was as a child. It's like, wow, they're like, yeah, Denzel, if you say don't go touch that, you're gonna go touch that. If you say don't do this, you're gonna go do this. And so it's better off if we just tell you not, like, just don't say anything about it.
That's that TI we all have. And I'm glad we're illuminating this because I feel like this isn't talked about much. But what about you, Grace?
Man, so, well, first of all, what you guys said was so interesting, but I have to say, Brenna, I'm really impressed that you were able to call things out from such a young age, because, I mean, that just seems like really, really good NI and TI for a kid, because I definitely wasn't able to recognize those sort of things as a kid. Actually, once I started, so I guess the first few years of life, like my parents said I was like the easiest baby, just like always sweet, just always wanting to be held. Like I wouldn't cry and I'd only get upset if I wasn't around them. And once I was around people, I was happy, and I never really caused trouble. And I remember just having this total, like, very open mindset of, like, we're all together, we're all taking care of each other. I remember the weirdest things. Like, I had a stuffed animal that I thought would protect me from bad dreams. And, like, when I had a bad dream, I'm like, oh, man, well, she must have had a rough day. So, I'll treat her nice and she'll be okay. And I know she wants to take care of me. And I just always had a very, I guess, optimistic mindset. But then once I was in maybe like kindergarten, I started to recognize bad feedback that I was getting, and started to really internalize things like, oh, you're doing something wrong. Or, I was definitely told a lot, like, I don't understand you. What are you asking about? When I was, asking questions like, why does this happen? Or what is the meaning of this? And a lot of people were like, that's so silly. Why do you want to talk about that? And I think I probably like internalized it a lot and became very shy. And what's super, super weird, I actually have no idea how to conceptualize this, so I wonder how you guys relate. When I was like maybe in elementary school, I actually was pretty much in I felt the experience of being like an NFP. I was just constantly daydreaming, like not about anything real, but just kind of off in La La Land, like repeating movies inside of my head, like stuff like that. It felt really what I would consider to be NE and FI. And I sort of like disconnected in a way. I probably had similar family dynamics a little bit to you too, Brenna, where, like my brothers growing up had a lot of medical needs. And so I think that was really stressful for my parents. And I realized that I actually maybe couldn't help. So I think I wish that I could have had the strength to like not internalize it, because I was just so impressed at your ability to kind of be bold in those situations. But as I got older, I really started to like realize, oh wait, that's wrong, and like wait, that's okay to sort of speak out against certain things. I think I've sort of grown a little bit more into NI and TI. Once I became a teenager, I started to really care a lot about purpose, and I really started to think critically and question things, and sort of started to change like the narrative. I guess like, it's easy, maybe I think it's an FE thing, to like internalize things to some degree too, because you like, and something I talked to Megan about this once, and I think you gave me really interesting advice that sort of FE users can tend to like take all the advice that we get from people and sort of mix it together and think, oh well, that must be me, and not really like take the time to let our TI define things the way that we actually see it. We can accidentally adopt the attitude that somebody else has. And so if other people say you don't have impact, you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll shut up now. But yeah, something I realized as I got older is like, whoa, it's possible to have impact. And I've strangely, like, I almost feel like I'm in the process of becoming more like an ENFJ for a while instead of less like one. I feel like most people's growth path might be, they are ENFJ, they're intensely one, and then they kind of, the intensity of their ENFJness can sort of fade out. But I guess I'm almost starting to wake up to what it is to be an ENFJ. And I know I have a lot more growth to do in general. But yeah, I relate to a lot of what you guys were saying about, being little and being super talkative, and asking all sorts of questions like, why this, why that? How does this work?
Yeah.
How do these friendships work? How does this system work? So yeah, I relate to you guys.
And I just want to say really quick that totally speaks to how type, like your experiences impact sort of how you come off and stuff like that, especially for an FE dom. If you're going to be told one thing, that you might think that that's how you are, and it really can affect your behavior.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. All right, so my turn, right? Okay, cool. So my childhood is crazy for me because, like, honestly, I don't have that much vivid memory of my childhood. But from what I do remember, a lot of my parents would say, like, I always was the more inquisitive type. Like, I used to always really, like, ask my parents a lot of questions. Like, most kids ask their parents, like, why is the sky blue? Stuff like that. But, like, I would be asking my mom, like, stuff like, have you ever died before? Like, what is that like? And she would just be like, no, like, you know, I never died, Lonnie. But I would just be curious about different things. And I feel like growing up, like a lot of people kind of like, you know, I was the smart kid in school. I took like honors and like tag and, you know, AP classes and stuff growing up. So I kind of always had that like, oh, you know, he's smart, you know, kind of the smart kid vibe. So I would say for me, I've always been very inquisitive, and I always kind of feel like I could like peer into the deeper meanings behind things. I feel like also too, growing up, I wasn't as, I would say, outgoing. I think I'm a lot more outgoing now than I used to be. I feel like I was a little bit more to myself and a lot more shy when I was younger. But my parents used to always kind of like make it seem like I was always into my shell and didn't really want to like talk as much. But the funny thing, like Denzel said, like I don't just talk just to talk. Like if it's something that I'm really into, or if it's like something that I feel like I have a lot of insight on, you won't be able to shut me up. Like I'll just be talking like forever. Like I love to conversate. And I think as a kid, like that's something that I feel like I always did good. Like I always kind of was cool with like I never really had like a specific friend group. You know how like in middle school or in high school, you have like the jocks and the athletes and like, you know, the weird kids and so on and so forth. Like I kind of feel like I was a bridge a lot, and I kind of just got along with everybody. So I do feel like I always kind of had that like people skill element to me. Like my FE was there, but it wasn't like, I guess, as like strong as I kind of understand it now. And I do feel like a lot of times when I will have to explain like how I think about things to my parents, like it would be hard for us to understand, because my parents are both censors. I think my dad is an ISTJ and I think my mom's an ESFJ. I'm not 100% sure, but it was always kind of a disconnect when I had to like explain like why I do certain things or how I think. Like I feel like it was always more metaphoric, and they kind of like want things to be in a more concrete way of like, okay, well, you said this, but like explain it better. Like they used to always get on me because like they would say stuff like, you don't really have like common sense. Like, why did you do it like that?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do it this way when you could have just took the simple 1-2 step? And I'm like, I don't know. My mind was just like, do it like this. And I kind of feel like that's
a common sense thing too. And I'm like, well, I didn't know it was common to me. So
exactly. And that's when I started to realize like common sense isn't common, because not everybody has the same way of thinking. So for me, like that's when I started to understand like, okay, something about me is different, because most people don't really think like I do. And why is it when I'm around people, I'm always thinking about how they operate and how they will perceive something.
Yeah.
You know, like I would never look at myself first and be like, well, what do I think about this? I'm like, well, how is this going to come off to everybody else? If I decide to wear this shirt or whatever, what are my parents going to think? I mean, I think as kids, we all kind of do that, but I feel like I kind of did it a little bit more than like the average kid. Like I was always kind of good at picking up on like the perspective that's being had on me, or like the emotional climate, I guess you could say. So I guess that's kind of how I describe myself as a kid. Like I always loved to play with all the kids in the neighborhood, and I was like really social and stuff, or my friends. I wasn't like really popular, but I was like cool. Like I was like just, you know, cool with everybody. So I guess that's how I would describe my childhood, or me as a child.
yeah. Brenna, did you say you wanted to say something briefly?
Yeah, just real quickly, I just wanted to say to Grace, just because I really related to what you said, and I think that I actually wanted to make sure I didn't paint too much of one half of the picture for you, because that I was much more outspoken when I was younger, right? But as years and years passed, I definitely got so many people saying things to me, or like being punished for it so many times, or just called out or embarrassed or shamed, or not understood, and the frustration of that. I definitely started trying to rein myself in, and really like trying as hard as I could to like not be obnoxious and not speak up and not be outspoken. And that was really painful, I think, because I then became so self-aware of like, oh, I so desperately want to speak up and say this thing, but if I do, then it's going to cause me some shame or punishment, or people are going to think that I'm really annoying and obnoxious. And I feel like that lasted a lot throughout towards the end of high school and into college. And then what you were saying too with your family dynamics, yeah, I feel like I constantly would go into a dream world that was just like my safe space. Someone else mentioned that earlier. It might have been Lonnie, I don't know, but someone mentioned that too, of kind of going into this fantasy world that's just where you can retreat to. And I really relate to that, especially when I was really confused about my family dynamics, and like really desiring support from that, but not getting it necessarily. And then since then, I would say the past 5 years, since college or something, has been a lot of deprogramming of allowing myself to be more outspoken and going back to calling things out and stepping more into that again. So I don't know, I just wanted to kind of reflect that back to you, that I do totally relate to what you're saying also.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, that's so encouraging to know that you relate. And that kind of reminded me, I heard this before, it might have been from Megan, that like in a way introverted thinking is like a sword. Like go out as a perception that you have and you can share it, or if it sort of gets like suppressed and you kind of internalize things and try to like step on yourself and bottle it up, then you can end up kind of like stabbing yourself with it. And I feel like that's kind of like what happens if you like internalize all of the criticisms that people have of you and you adopt the criticisms as the truth and you like 100% like believe that that's the reality. A lot of FE users, you know, will, I guess, like think that they're kind of like, I've heard like so many FE users be like, well, you know, like either I could be like spreading all this good stuff, but if I'm bad, I could be like spreading like a corrupted virus. And so what do you have to do? Like self-destruct. And so like TI is like kind of powerful either way, but yeah, either, you know, I relate to what you were saying about how you had to deal with sort of like bottling yourself up too, but it was very inspiring just hearing like the confirmation that no, you can like have judgments, like those are valid, like you can share, because like sometimes it's, if the world is saying that there's something wrong with you, like sometimes you, like the world might be wrong. And you don't realize that your TI could like be recognizing that there is something wrong with the system. Like the alternative.
Yeah, if we don't trust ourselves to have TI. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you guys often feel like you're prone to like checking your emotional perspective of situations off of other people's perspective?
Yeah.
Like kind of like formulating from everyone else's?
I definitely feel like I try to see all of the sides, and I think Denzel was talking about this too. Like I like try to understand every single perspective, even if I don't agree with it. But I do also feel like it influences. I'm like always open to changing my perspective, weirdly.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean, Drew, or kind of different?
Kind of, yeah.
That's why I have to, like, with my, like, in politics and stuff like that, my father-in-law, he's a Republican, ESTJ. He's very knowledgeable and he makes sense with a lot of things. I don't really, like, know, I'm not too heavily into politics and stuff. I just kind of, like, I'm still formulating all my opinion. So what I do is when I'm talking to a very strong Democrat, then they give me all their strong opinions, and I'm like, okay, cool. What would a Republican say to this? Like, what's their argument toward these things? Like, well, a Republican would probably say this is that. Okay, and why don't you think that's valid? It's like, well, that's because this. I'm like, oh, okay. And I don't adopt it, but then I do the same thing to, like, maybe like my father-in-law, and I'm like, okay, well, what would a Democrat say to this? Well, a Democrat would probably do this, say that. Why don't you think that's valid? It's like, well, because, you know, this, that. Okay, and then I go and I'm looking at everything and I'm like, I think I like this. Put this away, like that. And then I find myself somewhere like in the middle. So
my like very, very favorite quote is like, all we know is that we know nothing, and that's the height of human wisdom.
Yes, I love that quote. Yes.
So yeah, kind of I wanted to say about what Grace was saying about TI being kind of like a sword. I think that, you know, when you're stabbing yourself with your own TI, that is the sort of self-sacrifice that ENFJs could get into, of thinking that you have to completely turn off your mind in order, and that your purpose is you exist to please everyone else. and that's painful. And I related to pretty much everything that all of you guys said, but I've experienced this sort of back and forth even throughout childhood of being really bold and outspoken, and also being very feeling like I need to hold myself back, because I mean, I've been called obnoxious and annoying like quite a bit. Like that was one of like the main things. I in like elementary school, I always was the type to befriend the new kid like on the first day, and like I always wanted to make sure people felt comfortable. I also just kind of growing up, I feel so my dad was a politician growing up, and so I grew up going to all these campaign things, and I like got very aware of politics because I couldn't really avoid it, and I think that really influenced some of my outspokenness. I remember even when I was a kid, I would ask a lot of I asked why about everything, even annoying things. But I remember I would be like, why is there a dollar store and not a penny store? Why is there not like a free store? Why is there money? Like, it doesn't make sense. I would like say things like that. So like I totally relate to Brent. And like, I mean, I would ask questions to teachers just out of curiosity, and they would think that I was being a smartass when I was just being very earnest. Like that's been a thing too. But I started doing ballet when I was 3, and I quit when I was 9. And I got really into, we did the Nutcracker every year. I got into, so when I was 5, I played in my first musical. I was I was an orphan in Annie. And I think this is a pretty funny story of just how I was as a kid, is that, so my sensing wasn't great. I wasn't really aware that being on stage meant that people were really looking at me, but I wanted to be next to Annie so bad that I totally didn't listen to the choreography, and I stomped over from the beginning of the song to the end so that I was standing right next to Annie. I was like 5. But like I had that sort of determination, or like, I'm just gonna walk over there or something. But I didn't realize at the time, like that I was, out of place or whatever, or that I was not where I was supposed to be. And yeah, I kind of related to like Leeann, what you were saying about like as a kid being a little bossy, but at the time, like I didn't even realize that it was bossy, because I thought that people would just let me know if they didn't agree or something. Like, for example, whenever I was in ballet, I had a friend over, and I was learning the dance like for the Nutcracker, but she wasn't in it. And I was like, okay, we're going to do this dance. And you could either be a snowbird or a snowflake, and it's completely up to you. But if you're a snowflake, you can't come in until this beat. And I was like 4 or something. And I remember she like danced at the wrong time, and I cried about it because she wasn't taking like it seriously in my eyes or something. And my mom has that on film, and so she always just makes fun of me about it because like she was like, "You were such a brat." But like at that time I was like, no, we were doing this dance. I wanted it to be good. And like all that. So yeah, I was just very much a musical, like artsy sort of kid. So I feel the need to ask you guys how we're doing on time, because we did definitely have more questions. And I don't know how, like, do you guys want to talk for like 15 more minutes, or what do you guys think?
I think 15 minutes would kind of be good because my phone's kind of dying.
Yeah,
at least for me, I'm like on 27%. So
I think, for me, if we could shoot for like 9, that would be great. Like be done, or sorry, 8 Central.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just shoot for that then. And then if you have to leave, you could just leave, and say goodbye if you have to leave. We'll do a hard stop at 8 p.m. Central, and we could just try and get through whatever questions we have. Because I know, for those of you who don't know, those of us making this group or deciding on this video, we all just went full ENFJ mode and decided to brainstorm together, and we created a list together, and we created this whole way of how are we going to facilitate it? How are we going to collaborate? What's the order? So if you're wondering why we're not talking over each other that much, it's because we actually used FE to figure it out.
With a sprinkle of TI.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think that's so hilarious to me. So, okay. This question, what do you do when somebody makes you uncomfortable? How do you react?
So I will just preface this by saying this is definitely where my Enneagram 9 comes out, I guess, where they're known as like passive aggressive. And there's interesting nuance with that too, but I guess what I do first is I try to understand their intentions. Like, okay, are they intentionally trying to make me uncomfortable? And if they are, then I can either ignore them so that it won't satisfy them, or I can do it back so that it's like, oh, well, let's see how you feel. And I do it like twice as hard, but that's my passive aggressiveness. Or I could just directly tell them like, hey, I don't like that. You're making me uncomfortable. Stop. I rarely do that third one. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's how it usually is for me. I mainly just try to figure out like what their intentions are behind it, and I kind of go from there. So it's situational.
Yeah, I think it's definitely situational, and yeah, I feel like it depends on like how well I know someone will depend on how vocal I am. Maybe that's a two thing. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, like if I know you very well, like I'm gonna be very straightforward with you. Especially if it's one-on-one. If it's like a group setting, I'm also a social too, so it may be harder in that context. But yeah, if I don't know someone very well and I don't intend on getting to know that person very well, or I don't really, we're not, jiving, and they're just saying things that are like making me kind of feel weird. I mean, like it depends on what it is, but if it's just kind of a low key kind of like, man, like I don't really like this, I'm just gonna like disengage from that person probably.
I think my FE is so active that when someone is acting like hostile or making me uncomfortable, my first reaction is just confusion. And I'm like, did I do something wrong to cause this? Like, what was the stimulus here? And then I don't know. Once I can figure out what to do next, then I usually just try to like diffuse or leave.
Yeah, I would say that it's kind of same with what Drew just said. I think my first reaction is to analyze, like, why do I think this is going on? And then also same with Denzel of like, what's their intention behind it? And I kind of pair those two things together. And I feel that I do that very quickly. And I also feel like I do it psychically, like it's like happening before someone's even said anything out loud. I'm already like super all into that situation and trying to analyze it. And then when I was younger, I think I would fall more into the trying to people please, or kind of smooth things over. But now I'm way more intense with boundaries, especially because I've been burned too many times, or I have not taken a discomfort feeling as a very real sign that something bad could happen, because sometimes that really is what that feeling is maybe a hostile person or someone who doesn't have your best intentions in mind. And so I used to try and like, I don't know why, but the example I'm thinking of like being in a bar and being hit on by someone for some reason right now, because I feel like that situation is like, it can go so bad so quickly in like a very real bad way. And it can also be really great. And it's almost like a kind of good ground to talk about that, because you have to make these kind of snap judgments sometimes. And for me, it's very like intuitive. And I would before want to make sure that the person being uncomfortable, like it wasn't my fault and that they thought this great thing about me, or that they were feeling okay because I'm not comfortable with anyone feeling uncomfortable. But now I kind of will recognize that sometimes it's totally the other person, and I will just put a boundary up and walk away or say something really blunt that I need to say. In other situations too, like, you know, in work environments, in any environment, really, I'm much more boundary focused now. But that's something I had to learn. Maybe you guys can help me out with if that's like, is that TE or something? Like, am I like kind of coming into a little more assertiveness in certain ways that maybe weren't as natural to me when I was younger? I don't know.
So I saw a comment from Dario Nardi on Facebook, who he's an INTJ personality researcher. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the right, I guess, title for him. He posted something where he said that he has really observed that strong TE is really good at boundaries and like observed that in his research. And I agree too. So but I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there. Cool.
Well, can I just say something?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that, like, in the context of, like, because I'm your age, I would say that, like, I've gone back and forth in terms of, like, you know, depending on where my mindset is, like, depending on where my self-esteem is, that's going to impact, like, how good I am at setting boundaries. Like, how much do I value, like, my well-being and my inner person to be where I can be like, listen, this is not okay. Because, and also there's other things that come into play when you talk about like being woman in that kind of a situation, because then you're dealing with potentially threat response, and then you could be falling into like a fight, flight, or fawn. But anyway, yeah. So like I've been in situations like that where I've not responded how I wish I would have. Like I've done more of a fawn, and then later coming back, like I feel like shame around, man, I really wish I would have said something and did something. But I think at other times in my life, maybe even when I was younger, I might have. So I think it really might depend on also where you're at in terms of, I guess, self-esteem and
Definitely.
yourself.
And what you said to Leeann earlier about it depends who, like, just totally circumstantial. Who's the person? How well do you know them? All of that.
I will just say that I decided to go to the bathroom whenever Brenna started talking, because I know her the most, and I didn't want anyone to think that I didn't want to listen to them talk. It's just like another example of like something like that. I just do it instinctively.
That's adorable.
And I was like, whatever, she can't get mad at me.
Love it.
But anyway. So, okay. All right, wait, were you done, Brenna, or is it?
Oh yeah, Grace,
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah. So yeah, I really related to what you said, Leeann. Like sometimes it can fluctuate, and a lot of times the way that you react to someone is a reflection of, like, you know, something like self-esteem, or like what you really believe about yourself at that moment. That can definitely be. And I also related to what you guys were saying about kind of like being almost like being startled and confused by when something does make you uncomfortable trying to analyze it and figure out where it came from. Because I'll kind of think like, is that, you know, a them problem or a me problem? And I naturally just want to be like, oh, you know, that was my fault. What should I change? But it, you know, it does depend on the situation, because, you know, if it's somebody that I don't know, I probably won't really take it to heart that much, because, you know, I don't think that whatever they thought is an accurate reflection of the situation going on. Because a lot of times, generally, you know, they don't really know what's going on, and it's just kind of two people passing each other, and whatever they said is not very likely going to be insightful and helpful in how anyone would change their behavior. If it's someone who I'm like acquainted with, it would be hard, because I'd probably be more likely, I don't know, to internalize it and feel like it was my problem, and I probably wouldn't feel comfortable. Like I'm not an assertive person. I relate to Denzel and like being a little bit more like passive 9. I have a lot of 9 tendencies in that way. I definitely wouldn't be like, hey, you made me feel uncomfortable, or, you know, anything like that. But if it was someone that, you know, and it, like in those situations, it's like the hardest because you actually, sometimes I'll be lost. Like, was that my problem? Do I need to change? Or did they misperceive something? I actually don't know. It's a little bit frustrating, but when it's someone that I'm close to, especially if it's like someone in my family, I feel really comfortable just like bringing it up later and being like, hey, you said this, and it kind of made me sad that you thought this. Is there something that you want me to change? Is there something I can do? Or, you know, I might say like, you know, the way you said that was kind of harsh. And, you know, like sometimes I might, like if I feel like I know them well enough to sort of know where it did come from and why it happened, then I feel more comfortable having a discussion with that person about it. Like, so what does need to change so that we're not bugging each other, you know, or that we're not accidentally making each other feel bad because one of us is getting annoyed and maybe the other person did or didn't do something. But how can we make sure that those things don't happen? I would feel really comfortable having that kind of talk with my family, but not so comfortable like with you know, someone who was maybe an acquaintance or something. So there's a whole lot of variables in there.
Definitely. Oh, Lonnie, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I relate to a lot of like what you guys said about it being situational when somebody upsets me. Because a lot of times I feel like I don't really get upset at things like very easily. I kind of pride myself on that. Like for something to really irk my nerves, it would have to be something like really serious. So when something like upsets me, like a lot of times I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the first steps that I could take to try to resolve the situation? Is it something that I did? Is it something that the other person did? But usually I'll look at myself first. I'll be like, okay, well, did I do something? Did I say something wrong? Did I say something off? Like, let me know. And a lot of times I'll try to go into the whole like understanding of like, if it is the other person's fault, and I'll try to understand like, okay, well, why do they do this? Well, I'll try to like be empathetic. But especially when I was younger, I did that a lot. And I used to kind of get me like caught up in situations where I felt like I was being like gaslighted. And I think now I kind of like, I forgot her name, but she was talking about setting boundaries. I think I'm getting better at doing that and not taking things personal and just learning how to like not beat myself up if something does happen. Because a lot of times something upsets you, say somebody does something that like really irks you, or they say something that you know isn't true, or say they say something that's like harmful, especially like if you're close. Like if it's somebody that's not close to me or they're not family or friends, then it won't really bother me as much. But if it's somebody that's family, then it's like, okay, I'm looking at it a little bit different. But then I also had to learn too, like, don't beat yourself up and feel like you're at fault for every single thing that happens or goes wrong. And
Okay.
I think like for FB users, that can be kind of a tough thing because we want to keep the peace. We want to like not rock the boat too much and kind of make a big deal out of situations. But I realized that sometimes you have to like put your foot down and be like, okay, well, this upsetted me. I didn't like the way you said this to me, or I didn't like that you did this. Like that's something I've kind of had to learn more, like speak up for yourself. Because I feel like other people kind of always did that for me. Like if something happened, like in school or something, they'd be like, hey, don't mess with Lonnie or whatever. And it's not that I couldn't defend myself, but sometimes I guess I had this idea of like, oh, I don't want to like come off as like mean or whatever. And I had to realize like it's not about not coming off as like not mean or whatever. You have to learn how to defend yourself and stand up for yourself. So I think for me, like that's kind of how I would view situations when like somebody makes me upset. Like I want to try to just make peace at the end of the day. I don't want the situation to have to go on forever because I don't like lingering things, you know, especially when people are like passive aggressive and not upfront about what's going on or what's wrong. Like that really kind of irks me. But then it's funny too because I've noticed at times I can be passive aggressive when I don't like admit how I feel about something directly to somebody. You know, just being like, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine, knowing that something kind of like made you mad, you know, like, so that's kind of how I would say I deal with those situations.
Yeah. So I just have to say that when I was like in high school in particular, I related almost exactly like Grace, like everything you were saying of like, I just would be like, oh, okay, so this was my problem then. Okay, so what did I do? Or I would like take it from that approach of like what you were saying there, like 1,000%. And also like, cause I think I believe that people are good at heart. So it's like, I started out like way more just assuming it was me. Then it kind of grew into like, okay, let me look at their intentions. And I would, if someone had good intentions, or so I thought, then I would be sort of like not wanting to say anything. But if it seemed like someone was trying to, like, if it seemed like it was clear that they weren't really paying me the same respect that I was paying them, then that's where I would feel a little bit more comfortable setting boundaries. I'm still working on the boundaries thing. But what I've really been, I would say the past few years, the way I view it, which I agree with pretty much like everything you guys were saying about how it really depends on the person and the situation and all that. And if I know someone a lot more, like with my closest friends and my family, I really want to get to the point where we know that we can always say anything to the other and there's never really a problem. That's always my goal, like with all like friends, is to get to that point. But I think that what I really try and do now, which I think is maybe more TI, is try and notice incompatibilities. Because sometimes someone has amazing intentions, but there's just a little incompatibility in the sense where like, I still should enforce my boundaries whether or not the person, like, it shouldn't really, like, I've been realizing it shouldn't really have to do with like, it doesn't really have to do with if the person has good intentions or not. It's still my boundaries and it's still my truth no matter what. And I can control saying it in a compassionate way, but I shouldn't, I really make an effort to, like, it really should be like, it shouldn't be my truth and my feelings versus yours. And I started when I was younger feeling like I would make room for theirs. But it really, like, if they aren't making room for my truth and if they don't care about my needs, then yeah, you either just disassociate if you can, or like I don't want to feel like I'm gonna be small. Like we both have to make room for like each other. And so that's why like I will more proactively look to see any sort of incompatibilities to prevent like unnecessary arguments. Like for example, like Denzel, you were talking too about like the Democrat and Republican thing. Like my like grandma, we didn't vote for the same people, so why would I start a fight with her about it? You know, like you know certain things that, not that you shouldn't be allowed to talk about. Like I love getting into more controversial discussions with when there is a sense that we're allowed to have that and you're going to hold space for that. But you know, I'd rather just notice the incompatibility so that I don't have to like waste my breath, because it makes so much more sense for me. Okay, like, sorry, I'm kind of rambling on this, but I think that some people are like like, just as like when you're dating, there's maybe a lot of people that you find attractive, but then there's like the one person, or like your partner or whoever you end up with, it's like they're my person. or like, or you meet friends like that or whatever. And it's like, for me, it's like, okay, these people get all of me, they get to see all of me, but I want to never, like, if I'm uncomfortable, I never want to lose respect for someone, you know, like I want to be able to keep love from a distance if I need to, and like recognize what that relationship should be. Like I have a lot of acquaintances and I don't think that that's wrong. Like I love people. Like, isn't it amazing to have lots of acquaintances? Like that's how I see it, at least, is that, and it's not that it's not that like all those acquaintances aren't compatible enough with me to become a friend, but it's just like, I don't know, like, if that makes sense. I just feel like my FE is always trying to adjust, like, what role I should play in people's lives, and how can I detach if that like the most sense. Because if someone is really making me uncomfortable, it makes me wonder, like, is there something that they're doing that is triggering to me because of something that is in my shadow? Or is this just, like, I want to know, like, what it is. Like, sometimes it's, oh, okay, they believe in free will differently than I do, or something stupid like that, where it's like, oh, okay, because I never want to, like, get to the point where I'm not able to send them love, even if it's from nothing, but yeah.
Yeah, Megan, I almost feel like I love that too. And so it takes a lot for me to be uncomfortable. So in answering this question, I almost went to the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like I'm so interested in why we don't agree, and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And I like want to know and I want to talk to you, that I'm not really uncomfortable in those kind of situations. So it's like when it gets really uncomfortable is when I'm like, oh my God, boundaries, here they are. Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
but
I just want to say though really quick that when Brenna and I, since we work on business stuff together, there's been a couple times when we've been trying to figure something out and we just, for whatever reason, aren't understanding each other. But we're like, ooh, this is fascinating. What does this mean? Like, like whenever there is, like, I think part of it is like sometimes the tension isn't even a bad thing. It just means that you guys are seeing something different, and you could then switch to curiosity.
Yeah, something new to figure out. Like, ooh, what is this?
Yeah.
So you definitely have to make sure that the other person's on the same page.
Oh yeah.
Because that's happened to me before with my boyfriend who's at ESCP. Is sometimes I'll be like, whoa, this is kind of interesting that we just, disagreed on this. And then he's like, thinks that that's, not what it is. So
Yeah, that's so
I
true.
do that too.
I just want to say too, really quick.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, just really quick to that even with my INFJ partner, who is also interested in figuring these things out, I think that sometimes, I don't know if this is my stronger FE or something, I like won't wait for the argument to cool down to switch into that, let's talk about this. You know what I mean?
I had that issue with my INFP girlfriend.
Oh, really?
She gets so mad at me.
We're like, it's not that she doesn't want, and I'm sure an INFP would be similar. It's not that she wouldn't want to talk about why we're different, but sometimes, like, literally in the heat of an argument, I'll be like, oh my God, this is tertiary SE versus inferior. She's like,
Oh man, yes, I relate to that.
Yeah.
We're very like meta about our conversation.
Oh my God, yes. I feel like maybe this is because we're FE doms. We feel like kind of comfortable with the different dynamics because it's like our jam. It's like I sometimes feel like I'm like looking at the argument from a bird's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
I
And you
think
switch really fast, and the person's like, "What the hell? Well, like, what just happened? Like, what are you talking about?" All of a sudden, yeah. That's interesting. Why does that happen?
Yeah. I know.
Meta.
I think in a weird way, that's also what like leads to my passive aggressiveness in a way, or what could seem that way, because for me, I'm trying to understand how the other person is really like, again, like what their intentions are, like, stuff like that. And one thing about me is that, like, kind of like what Megan was saying earlier, I want people to feel as comfortable as possible. So if I read that you are just like that, like this is just how you are, you just speak in this type of tone, or you're just like this, okay, well then you're not actually trying to make me uncomfortable or anything. And in that case, I'm not going to really address you about it. But in order for me to figure that out, I might speak to you in the same tone that you're speaking to me a few times, so that I can see how you'd respond. And if you don't even, or if you're not even bothered by it, then I'm like, oh, so to them, they don't even notice. And so they're not trying to attack me. But then if they're like, hey, then I'm like, oh, you do that to me. So you get what I mean? So like, it's seemingly like, yeah, like I'm almost like I'm testing it. Like, okay, like there was somebody at my job who was like very like bossy. And like she was an ESFJ, and she was just very like, really, instead of like saying like, hey, I can help you out, she's like, no, that's not how you do it. You put your numbers in. And it's just like, oh my goodness, so
God.
She was just always like acting like that. And everyone at work is like the type to like roll their eyes at her and everything, but they don't really like say much. And so me, finally, I'm always most easily able to defend when I see that it's a social problem. Like, oh, this is bothering everyone. Now I have enough ammo to go with this. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to treat her the same way that she treats us. And so I just started going like the same exact tone, stuff like that. And she was like, why are you acting like this? I was like, you know, you come off this way all the time. And that was like a very, you know, eye-opening thing for her. And I was also testing to see if, like, you know, would this bother her? Like, if she met herself, would this bother her? Because there's some people who, like TE, there's a lot of times they just talk in a certain tone. And to me, it used to be very offensive. But then I realized when I tried to do the same thing to them, they were unfazed. I was like,
sometimes they even want it. And that's why they're mad at you, is because they want you to do it.
yeah. And so then I was like, oh, okay. Well, then in that case, I shouldn't take this personally. I shouldn't be bothered by it. But if they did get offended, then now that's like, okay, so maybe that was me being like, it could come off as me being passive aggressive when in actuality, I was testing that. So
I think FE can kind of be really good at matching energy, and just like when somebody, it's like a mirror almost, like how you did that with like just showing her how she acts, and then her starting to realize. Like I think I kind of do that sometimes, and it kind of can come off as being passive aggressive, but that's not always my intent. It's just like I'm just trying to show you how you're treating me, and sometimes people don't understand it, and it's like until they like receive it themselves on the other end, and it's like, oh, okay, now I see why you don't like that.
100%.
So
how would you think you would respond if someone did that to you, Denzel? I'm curious. Like if you were acting a certain way and someone didn't like it and then they reflected that back at you, how would that make you feel?
I would honestly love it, because like I would because I really like being shown myself in that way. Like, because I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. So if I notice that I've rubbed someone the wrong way and like they do it to me, and I notice like some type of energy there, that I'm like, oh my gosh, like is this how I was coming off toward you? I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be more conscious of that. I did not know. Like, I hope that whatever. And I really like to think that like that's how I'd respond to such. And so I'd hope that, you know, other people would respond in the same way.
So we're pretty much at time, but I wanted to throw this out there in case anyone did want to share. I don't know. I really just wanted to know if we can share some of our pet peeves. I don't know why. I was just really interested in that, because I feel like ENFJs, we keep a lot in regarding what that is. Like we're very open about, or like perhaps preachy about certain emotional things of what you should do. But I don't know if anything comes to mind, if anyone wanted to share.
Okay.
I mean, I immediately thought of something.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
And sorry it's so dark. There's no overhead light in here, and I tried to fix it and I gave up. But so the first thing I thought of is I hate when people pull like the victim card and try to not take responsibility for their own emotions or situations, and then try to like make it my fault when it's very clearly not my fault. Like, and I can say that because I always will own up to it if it is my fault. Or like Denzel just said, please call me out anytime. I will receive it with grace. I want to know when I'm screwing something up or when I'm pissing you off. But if that's already happening, and then someone like, or I guess the biggest one is if someone acts like you should know that they're angry at you for XYZ when it's some petty thing they could have told you about up front and they never did. Like, dude, that's not my problem. That's your problem. Tell me about it.
I think my biggest pet peeve is when someone says something and the reason they give is that's just how it is, or that's how it's always.
Oh God.
Yes. They don't give no context or no further explanation. I hate that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, similar to what you guys were saying before, that it's like when people I think it's either when they shut down or when they kind of pull stuff out of thin air and sort of play the victim card and try to put their frustration, because you can notice a lot of times there's sometimes where it's as soon as somebody does like feel guilt, like you can tell that it comes from like they started to feel bad but they didn't want to, so then they wanted to like put it onto you, and it's like you feel that they're translating their guilt to you because you can feel it, and then you're able to be like, wait, that's not mine.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the issues where people sort of aren't, it's like basically whenever people aren't being genuine or they're being hypocritical in some way or inconsistent, like I think when people like shut down, something that always bothered me whenever you see it in the movies that somebody's like, I'm out of here, you made me mad, and they just storm out of the house.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, some people, I do understand that, but like I just always feel like that's like a cop-out, and it's like if you had stuck around to try to talk about it, then like everyone would be okay, because I think like especially if somebody else like shuts down assuming that you won't change, when you're in front of them saying like I'm ready, like please talk to me, I want to understand you, I'm being so transparent right now, and they don't, like it frustrates me so much. And I get like also some of it is I realize that some personality types are more inclined to it because their experience of emotion is more subjective, and it used to bother me more growing up, and I think I've started to realize like not necessarily that it's always okay, but that some people it's as real as anything for them to go away and process it themselves and then come back and they'll want to interact with you, but then like we seem like we're holding on to it because we still want to talk about it. So at the same time, I don't want to like put people who do that down or say that that's not right, but it is a pet peeve of mine just because it makes it hard to, it feels like your conversation gets stuck and it's hard to communicate.
I'm gonna say, after Denzel, I'll say.
I have to peace out, so I'm just.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye, guys. This
All
is
right,
really
bye.
enjoyable. Loved it.
Nice to meet you.
So,
Nice to meet you guys.
yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I literally have a video called False Victimization, and I pretty much, like, long story short, it came to me because I was in church where a lot of things happen, of course, and I was with a lot of college students. They were choir, and the preacher was talking about one character in the Bible, and he was saying, like, you know, like this character, he was like this, he was saying a whole bunch of like negative stuff about that character in the Bible. And everybody in me, like the choir people, like they're just like, yeah, we know people like that, you know, and they're just like saying things like that. But then he talked about a different character in contrast, and it's like, this character, you know, he was more like this and he was more like that. And then everyone was like, yup. And one of the things that immediately struck me that annoyed me was like, how do you know that you're not the prior character in somebody else's narrative, you know? Yep. And that really bothers me because it's like we're so quick a lot of times to just be like, yup, and like, you know, especially if a preacher is like saying, you know, like a lot of you may have some of those in your life. Like if I was a preacher, I'd say, you know, a lot of you might be that in somebody else's life. Check yourself. You know? And so that's something like, again, like I'm always like checking myself, like, okay, before I make myself a victim here, is this person a victim in that book? And again, trying to consider that person's perspective. So
that's the only thing you can control at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I think that's the best way to be able to like resolve the conflict. It's like, hey, so I saw things from this side, from my perspective. This is how I understood it in my worldview. How did you understand it? Okay, well, anyway, my intentions were, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be that way. I'm always going to own up to it if I'm like, no. But yeah, but the main pet peeve that I had was like being interrupted, I guess, like whenever I'm like speaking, because like I just, when I'm like talking to a lot of like my African relatives and stuff like that, again, like still talking, like if I'm like speaking, and I think like, you know, well, I have something important to say, and I like to listen to everybody else when they're speaking so I can hear and fully grasp it. But like when, especially like, no offense to any users, but a lot of them, they just get excited and they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, okay. And then I lost the thought. And so, all right. So then I just end up not speaking as much anymore. So that I was like, that's like the big pet peeve, like when people interrupt each other.
Yeah.
Could I go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I was gonna say some of my pet peeves are definitely like the one about people playing the victim and like not taking accountability and people trying to like guilt trip you. And I also don't like when people try to like marginalize me or make me seem like I'm dumb because I don't like go by their logic or think
Yeah.
how they think. Like that's a really big pet peeve of mine. And I think like that's one thing I've kind of like learned over like the course of my life is like everybody's not gonna think like you and understand where you're coming from, but that doesn't give you the right to treat people like they're stupid or treat people like they're just ignorant and don't know anything. And I think that's something I had to learn too, because sometimes I can be judgmental and think like, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about because they're this or that, or you know, like just kind of like not being so ego based. But yeah, that's one thing that kind of like really gets on my nerves. So people try to like marginalize me. Oh, you don't know about this because you're this or that. Like, how do you know what I know? You know,
Yeah.
like I really don't like that. It's crazy how people will judge you just off like how you look or how you talk or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, I may look like this or like be from this area or whatever, but you don't know what a person is capable of. You don't know you don't know what I've experienced. So how can you be so quick to jump to a conclusion of like what I know and what I understand? And the victim,
sorry.
the victim thing kind of like really irks me because it's like I understand in all situations, no matter what it is, positive or negative, like everybody's been a victim in some form or fashion. But I have a really big problem with people pointing the finger and not wanting to take accountability. People complaining about things but not doing anything about it. Like if you're not going to contribute to a solution, then why are you complaining about it? It's one thing to voice your opinion, and it's one thing to say how you feel and express that. Everybody should do that. But when you consistently keep complaining about the same thing and you're not doing anything about it, then who's the problem? Like, I really don't like that. And then people want to come to you and try to, you know, vent and, oh yeah, I'm dealing with this and that. I'm like, well, I didn't try to give you a solution and help you out. You're not trying to change anything. Why are you keep coming to me with the same problem?
Oh
And
my
I
God.
think that's what I've had to learn,
Yes.
like with setting boundaries and being like, okay, well, I tried to help you out and I tried to give you advice, but you didn't listen. And then when I told you that was going to happen, but you didn't listen to me. And then you're back with the same problem and you're the victim all of a sudden. Like, did you look at yourself? Maybe it's something that you're doing wrong. But people don't like to hear that. A lot of the times people don't want to be told about themselves. But those are some of my pet peeves. Those are some of my pet peeves.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, sorry, I didn't mean to try and interrupt you, but when you were talking about that, my pet peeve is when people make assumptions.
Yes,
like,
that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. Like, so for one, I was thinking closed-minded people who lack openness and aren't curious about things really, really bothers me. And that's because I find it so hurtful when people look at just the surface and they assume all these things underneath when they don't really do their due diligence of figuring out like what's underneath. And, you know, everything that they do makes complete sense to them based on their story that they're telling themselves or what they experienced. And so it's either like, I do think that sometimes people will, you know, do things that are maybe objectively invalid. I don't know. That's still who's to say. But the most important thing is that it's valid to them and they like did it for a reason. Like people, I think you have to give people that respect that even if you think that you understand something about life or that you know, have developed a character trait that maybe you think that they haven't developed or something. I guess I just think that everyone learns lessons in like a different order kind of. And so we have to sort of, when we're talking to people, realize that they have a reason for why they're acting that way and kind of get curious about what that is before you assume like everything about it. And I think that, you know, it's kind of weird because all of us with our NI, we can sort of see deeper beneath the surface. So we do kind of see things, but at least for me, it's sort of like, I see these patterns, but until they've been sort of confirmed, like I have the door open to being like completely wrong. Like I can see my patterns, but I will stand by the patterns way more than I stand by like, oh yeah, that person is doing this, you know, like I'm always like, I don't know, like I don't know why people do what they do. Like, maybe they're grieving, like, their best friend or something. Who knows? Like, and so I just think, yeah, assumptions and closed-mindedness. But anyway, did you want to add something? I was going to ask everyone if they had anything else to add, but I know, Leeann, I didn't know if you had something you wanted to share with us too.
I don't know. I was just listening to all of your thinking that I agree with most of them, and then thinking about some of them and how I am probably embody some of those traits that you're describing. What does that mean? Like, I was thinking about like, this sounds, some of these things sound like kind of like one issue, like Enneagram 1 issues. No, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, the playing the victim, not being able to, I relate to that. I feel like, I mean, from another, providing a perspective on that is like, you know, for some people, I'll say 1, I don't know, I feel like as a 2 with 1, I kind of vibe this, but like, it's really hard, like, when being confronted with like, when I feel like, and this I think is the one thing combined with 2 things, is like when I'm trying so hard, like in my own mind, to like do something for somebody, like, and then it's not the right thing. And then and someone like comes back at me as like, that's not the right thing, like that's like something that I have to face and deal with. Yeah, and like that's really hard, but it also feels to me like, to get a perspective, like to acknowledge that is like, it can be really painful, because like, as you know, having a 1, like being, I don't know if you relate to this at all, but the 1 is like feeling like that lack of rightness can feel like you're just bad, like you're just a bad human, and like that's such a hard thing to face.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, so I feel like we definitely could keep talking forever. All of us are ignoring our SI and we're probably tired. So,
My phone's on like 6%.
yeah, I just wanted to take the time for, if anyone wanted to share, either if they have YouTube, podcast, Twitter, any sort of typing service or whatever it is you're offering. I wanted to take time for people to sort of sign out and share that stuff. Lonnie, you could go first if your phone's dead.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. I haven't been posting as consistently on my YouTube, but it's Lonnie Gillard, LONNIE GILLARD. You can type it in. I also have a podcast, which is available on Anchor and Spotify. It's called The Power Within Podcast. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Alonzo Vibes _23. It's spelled ALONZO VIBEZ _23. And then you can also follow me on Instagram. My chef page is Chef Lonnie G. Is it Chef? It's Chef Lonnie.G 23. So that's my chef page. If you guys want to see like some of my cooking and my baking and stuff, I also have different items for sale. So yeah, those are my socials and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Whoever wants to go, Denzel.
So my YouTube is just Denzel Mensa. So that's DENZEL MENSAH. On there, I just pretty much talk about whatever comes to mind. A lot of type stuff. I'm a Christian, so I'm like really heavy into like theology and apologetics, trying to understand things along those lines, but then also understanding religion in total and just things that I think about society. So there's that. And then on Twitter is where like I'm most active, I'd say, which is at DZ2Blessed. So DEEZY 2_blessed. And then on Instagram, so Twitter is where you'll get like most of my opinions and stuff. Like literally there's a thread where I try to record all of my opinions. I love referencing them for myself. And on YouTube is where I also like vocalize those opinions. And then on Instagram, I've now become a little bit more active on there, especially with the IGTV stuff on there. So it's like, okay. So that's DZ2Blessed as well. So that's DEEZY 2_blessed. Yeah. Oh, and I do life coaching. If anybody ever wants to hit me up on that with, and I also do profiling as well. So.
He's a great typologer.
Brenna?
Yeah, so I am just about to relaunch my podcast called Nomad at Heart for an otherworldly perspective of life on Earth. And I am going to start doing a lot more YouTube videos. My business is called Astra Aura. So on YouTube, Astra Aura, ASTRAAURA. And same with Instagram. I'm about to start doing a Tarot for Transformation course starting April 8th, right? It's not April 8th yet, right? Yeah, it's the 2nd. Cool. And I also offer some pretty crazy metaphysical offerings. So
Ooh, I like that.
I do astral light healing, which is a type of quantum healing. And I provide channeled guidance and support for people's process of integration and embodiment. So you can find all those things at astraaura.com.
And
yeah, my type services are personalityblocks.com, and you can add me on Twitter at Leans with it, LEENS with it.
nice. Grace, do you have a YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, I do.
It's okay if you don't
I
want
have
to.
not really been on social media at all. It's been a crazy couple months, but hopefully at mid-April-ish I should start getting back. We'll see. But yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. I think it's Grace S. And then on Twitter, dang it, guys, I actually still haven't made a Twitter handle. I think it's what it was programmed to be at the beginning. It has a bunch of letters and numbers in it. So
I could link it if you want.
sure.
I could link all of your guys' stuff. If you just link it.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Link it.
Yeah. I'm gonna do some projects eventually. So I will just say there are projects kind of coming at some point, but it's okay.
Cool. Nice. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. And I also offer typing services that are linked below. I also recently launched this sort of membership group. I've done coaching before, but I'm kind of taking a pause on the coaching for more of a coaching group where if you're interested, it's a monthly fee for a Q&A, extra videos. You could ask any questions you want, and I'll get to them in the video form, and also a virtual workshop. So if anyone's interested, April 18th, I'm going to be hosting a virtual workshop about how to sort of let go of some of the control that your dominant function can have over control. Not trying to say you shouldn't have a dominant function, but sort of that element of surrender. So that's going to be linked below as well. And thank you so much for being here. This has been so much fun. I don't think I've ever been with this many ENFJs in a room. It's great. It's just so great to hear so many of my thoughts echoed. And
yeah, thanks for philosophizing, guys. Our favorite thing.
Yeah, so cool to be here talking with you guys. It's just, it's an incredible experience kind of having all those thoughts echoed for sure. So thank you for having us all on your channel, Megan. This is thanks for facilitating this.
Yeah, thank you, Megan.
So much fun. All right. Thank you guys. All right. Bye.
Bye.